All right, and a great pleasure for me to come back to my alma mater. I graduated from this university back in the 80s in the computer science school. And I'm currently working in Hong Kong for the Hong Kong Polytechnic University.
我其实是大学是在这个学校上的，我是80年代从这儿毕业，然后我后来在香港理工大学工作。
Well, this is a summary of a project that we have started for about a year, which actually involves students and graduates to together co-create the syllabus and curriculum for any rapidly moving topics.
这个项目我们其实是1年前开始的，我们而且是跟本科生和研究生一起合作，我们是让学生一起来参与这个教学大纲的改革，这样能够适应现在不断变化的这个整个商业和这个技术环境。
We believe this new learning pedagogies is important because today and into the future, we have to help students to learn, to think, and be able to reason by themselves, not just recalling what we have told them in the classroom.
而且我觉得这个方法是非常重要的，因为现在不管是现在还是未来，我们要帮助学生去学习，要帮助他们自己去思考，而不是只是记忆一些学校教的知识。
So in this seminar, I will introduce a new approach to teaching and learning, whereby, as I said, students and graduates and teachers together create and update the syllabus, and we do that systematically over the academic calendar.
然后呢，今天我要教的方法就是我们是教学和学习的2方面的一种新的方法。这个过程呢，我们是让本科生和研究生还有老师一起合作，然后我们对这个大纲的内容进行改革，然后做出一种系统的学习的新的方法。
The approach is very general. It can be applied to many disciplines, business, technologies, and many others. And in fact, we have also helped one of the government departments in Hong Kong to practice this approach as well.
然后呢，而且我们这个方法并不是说是针对某一个特定领域的，我们这个方法是在很多领域其实都可以适用，而且对公司也是适用的。实际上我们在香港帮助一个政府部门也在用我们这个新的方法进行了改革。
So a very brief showing about the project members. Majority of them are from PolyU, from different schools, from the hotel school, from the engineering faculty, and also from the business real estate department. And we also have a partner university, Potsdam University in Germany.
然后我们这个是我们的这个研究小组的成员，大家可以看到他们其实背景是非常多元化的，来自不同的大学，还有不同的领域。我们这是一个多元化的小组，其中还有包括来自德国一所大学的成员。
So as I said, we have to enable students to be able to think, to learn, not just remembering or recalling what we have told them in the classes. So how can we equip students with these skills?
然后呢，我们刚才也讲过，我们这个方法就是为了让学生去自己思索、自己去学习、主动学习，而不只是机械的去记忆一些东西。那么我们是怎么帮助学生呢？
This word called VUCA, VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. It is very good in representing what our students will face in the society.
这个他们有一个说法叫 VUCA， 它指的是我们现在当前学生面临的这个社会，它就是非常多变的，而且是充满了不确定的因素，是非常复杂的一个社会。
And uncertain, not clear, it can go any way, uncertainty.
就是说充满了不确定的因素。
And we also know about from newspapers, from internet, saying that the current practice, the classroom teaching, the traditional teaching, is becoming less and less effective.
而且我们从报纸，包括网络上，因特网上，我们也看到，现在的这个教学的方式已经变得越来越效率低下了。
This is PolyU's own research. In the last 6 years, our professors also discuss and discover that especially for primary and secondary schools, students are very bored. They do not want to attend a very fixed curriculum.
而且我们根据过去几十年的研究显示，尤其是在小学和初中、高中阶段，学生他们现在对现在的教学大纲内容越来越觉得无聊，他们不太愿意参与。
So this is the essence of the approach, and I'm going to show you in 5 steps, in a quick summary, what exactly is the new teaching and learning method that I've introduced.
下面呢，这个就是我们这个所谓的新方法的这个精华部分，它一共分为5个步骤。我现在来给大家介绍一下它是怎么学习的。
All right, so we go from number 1 to number 5. Number 1 is simple, just like me talking in a lecture now.
第一步就是很简单，就像我现在给大家讲课这个方式。
All right, number 2, number 3 is instead of using the whole semester, let's say 13 weeks, I only use about 70 to 80% of the time for my lecture. I use the remaining time to show my students how to do scenario development.
第二步呢，就是比方我们现在一个学期其实是有13周，其中的70%到80%的时间是我给大家讲课，但是剩下的时间呢，我们要跟学生一起来，他们来我们做一些这种研讨活动。
We'll give them the tools. We show them how to do the scenario development. We show them the method. We also give them resources to start with in order to do the scenario development. I will give more details in a minute.
我们会给他一些学习工具，然后也会给他一些资源，也会教他这个方法怎么去学习。下面我再做具体的介绍。
So number 3, students work in the library. They work in groups. They brainstorm. They discuss. They collaborate. And we give them, about 2 months for that period in order to generate the scenarios.
然后呢，下一步学生他们就会在图书馆，他们会自己形成一个学习小组，大家一起去商量，在一起去合作。我这个时间，我们一共给他们2个月的时间，让他们自己去做这个合作。
Okay, when we come to number 4, towards the end of the semester, students are asked to present their scenarios. I ask my student to present 4 scenarios for each student, right? They can present by documenting the scenario in a form that we provide to them, and I'll show you, or they can record a short video.
然后呢，到了这个学期的结束，我们这个学生就要在自己的在课堂上，大家要去展示，要去演讲，把自己的这个研究学习的成果要演示一下。每个人他都要做4项作业，一会儿我会给大家去展示一下。还有的人是这种录像视频的形式。
And in number 3 and number 4, I also bring in graduates of the university, graduates who have taken those subjects, so that they come and together work with the teacher and the students to brainstorm the scenarios as well.
在第3和第4步的时候呢，我还会把这个学校的一些已经毕业的学生邀请过来，让他们也参与其中，他们可以跟现在的学生一起来参与。
Okay, so after the semester, we come to number 5. Number 5 is my work as the teacher, as the professor. I get hundreds of scenarios. Now I need to analyze this scenario and see which scenarios are becoming imminent, becoming true. And if that's the case, I have to update the syllabus before the delivery for next semester.
然后呢，下一步第5步就是这个学期结束后，我说第5步其实就是我作为一个老师的工作了。因为我收到了几百份作业，然后呢，我要去做一些研究评估，然后再用于下学期我这个教学大纲是不是进行调整。
So we go back to number 1. Next time when I deliver, I'm delivering with an updated syllabus, and everyone is happy because the syllabus is closer to reality.
然后呢，我们又回到了第1步，就是我讲课，因为我这是在评估大家作业基础上做的讲课，所以我这个内容就更受学生们欢迎了，跟他们更契合他们的实际了。
So this is an overview of the new teaching and learning pedagogy of these 5 steps. It's a systematic method that helped students, teachers, and graduates to keep the course syllabus and the curriculum up to date.
这就是一个我刚才说的这个方法的一个整体的介绍。大家可以看到，它是包括现在的学生、包括毕业生和老师3方大家一起合作，来不断的去更新我们的教学大纲。
Well, there are a number of benefits for this approach.
这个方法有几方面的好处。
Firstly, it helps students to learn to learn. They be able to do research, and they can come up with scenarios that nobody can think of before.
第一步呢，它是可以增强学生的这个学习的能力。他这个学生呢，可以在这个过程中，他更好的去做研究，而且他会想出一些新的这个想法，他可能之前没有人想到的。
We believe that this also enhances students' confidence in answering questions that ask them to project into the future, and confidence in presentation.
而且呢，这个可以增强学生的自信力，这样呢，他可以一个是回答问题他更自信了，而且对于他未来是发展是更有好处了，包括他们的这个演讲能力也提高了。
With the techniques that I will introduce to you, students are also made more aware of the global trends and driving forces that may affect the field that they are studying.
而且呢，还有一点就是学生他对这个全世界范围内他们这个领域的研究的一个方向啊，包括有影响力的一些因素，他们就会更加的关注，更加的了解。
We're introducing this to all levels of students, including undergraduate students, and therefore undergraduate students getting a high exposure of knowing to do basic research.
然后呢，这个因为我们本科生也用这种方法去学习，这样呢，学生他们对一些这个研究领域的一些信息了解就更多了。
And in fact, for undergraduate students, because they haven't graduated, using this approach will bring them faster and closer with graduates, so that earlier, sooner they'll be exposed to the real world than before they graduate.
而且呢，因为我们主要把这个方法用于本科学生，他们通过这个方法的学习呢，可以更快的、更好的去了解这个实际社会的一些实际的情况和知识。
And lastly, this approach is it's a loop, it's a cycle, it's a feedback loop. So it's a cycle for systematically updating the course content.
而且呢，它是一个循环式的，我们可以通过这个方法不断的再去重新更新我们的这个教学大纲，然后更好的去为学生提供教育。
This is also very much in line with our university's strategic goal for the next 7 years of teaching and learning.
而且呢，它跟我们学校未来的这个7年的这就是规划整体的战略规划也是吻合的。
So I talk about scenarios. We use scenarios to do forecasting. Scenarios are important because they give us a rich context about what things may happen.
就是刚才我也讲到学生他们做的这个作业，他们这个呢，其实也可以帮助我们更好的去预测未来的这个发展方向，因为他们的内容是很丰富的，所以呢，可以让我们更好的去完善我们的大纲。
Scenarios are representations of the future. And we'll add more details to the scenario so that we'll guide the student to think about what may happen, who may be affected, when will it happen, what are some of the risks that may lead to the emergence of the scenarios.
因为这些是一些学生他们就是自己基于想象做的一些作业，但是呢，他会引导学生去思考将会发生什么事情，谁是参与其中的。另外呢，如果发生这种情况会有什么样的风险？
Okay, now I'm going to talk about the 5 steps of generating the scenarios.
然后呢，下面我讲一些学生做这种他们的这种想象性的作业的这个步骤。
Well, the first step is easy. Depending on how I set up the class. Some classes I set a set of questions and ask the students to choose. Some classes I set questions and students have to take that question.
它这个取决于我当时要教课的这个班是一个什么情况。有时候呢，就是我直接给一些问题，然后让学生们去选择他们想去回答什么样的问题。
All right. So the second step is, given a question, I will show you an example in a minute, right? How to identify trends and driving forces.
然后呢，比方说有一个特定的问题，我给学生了，然后呢，学生他们就要先确定这个领域它的这个未来的发展趋势是什么，然后影响这个发展趋势的一些因素是什么。
The third step, after you have identified the trends and driving forces, is to further identify the uncertainties, things that may affect the realization of those scenarios.
然后呢，第3步呢，就是你在确认了这个未来发展方向和影响因素以后呢，你还要去考虑它有哪一些不确定的因素，而这些不确定因素也会影响这个事物的发展。
So in doing step 2 and step 3, Students have to make use of the resources and the tools we give them. Students have to go to the library. Students have to search the internet. They have to discuss, right? So they have to do research in order to come up with good data supporting steps 2 and step 3.
然后呢，为了从第2步走到第3步，学生呢必须要用一些工具和一些资源，比方他们要去图书馆，要上网搜索，而且他们要进行一些研讨，要互相讨论，然后再收集一些数据。
Step 4 is to actually generate the scenario in terms of filling in a form, writing down the scenario, describing the scenario, and recording videos about the scenario.
第4步呢，就是你把你的这个研究成果可以具体化了。比方说要填一些图表，然后写一些文字，用文字性的表述，或者你要去做一些录像、视频。
And step 5, we finally capture the scenarios, and we ask every student to review other students' scenarios as well.
然后呢，第5步等于一个小组作业做出来以后呢，我们还要请别的学生来对你进行一个评估、评价。
Okay, for example, this is step 1.
这是我们第1步的一个具体例子。
Some of the questions that I gave to my students last semester is, how will business process management evolve in the next 5 years?
比方说，未来的5年，这个商业的一个整个运营的管理的模式会发生什么样的变化？这就是我们去年的一个作业。
For example, number 4, how will smart manufacturing affect process management in the next 10 years?
第4个问题就是说，比方说，什么样的在未来的10年，这种智能化的生产会怎么样影响我们这个管理的这个过程？
So at the moment, I don't have an answer, the student have an answer, nobody have an answer. But after research, after doing scenario planning, every person can generate different scenarios about potential, situations that could be, the answer to these questions.
对于这些问题呢，其实我本人也没有一个固定的答案，学生们他们目前也没有答案。但是呢，通过他们的研究、他们的调研，他们会发现不同的，他们会产生不同的答案。
So as a teacher, you can set any of these questions, allowing for flexibility and scope of research for your students and graduates to tackle.
然后呢，作为一个老师，你可以设计一系列这样的问题，然后呢，它应该是比较比较宽泛的一个研究领域的，这样你的本科生和研究生都可以去来试着解决这些问题。
So earlier on, I talked about resources and tools that we provide to the students.
刚才我还跟大家讲过，学生他们所需要的资源和工具。
Some of these tools and resources, including reports on the internet, books in the library, articles on the internet, journal papers in the library, and selective videos in the e-learning material on the internet.
这些资源呢，包括比方我们在网上可以找到的一些研究报告，图书馆的图书，还有网上的一些文章，还有那个一些杂志上的文章，还有一些网上的一些录像。
And for me, I also have configured a online learning environment together with my students so that we can discuss material, we can share, we can learn together.
而我自己呢，我还有一个网上学习的一个自己的网上空间，在这个地方呢，我可以和我的学生一起讨论，我们可以去分享一些研究成果。
So that's a full display of that environment. We use internet tools so that every student, even after they graduate, they can continue to operate that learning environment, and they can interact with the professor, with the tutor, and also with the other graduates.
这个是我们的整个这个学习模式的一个介绍，就是说，即便我们的学生他们毕业以后，他们还可以继续用这些工具，而且呢，他们还可以和自己的教授啊，还有以前的导师啊，还有其他的毕业生一起交流。
We call this a personal learning environment, and it helps the student to develop the practice for lifelong learning.
我们把这个称为一个全景式的学习模式，这样呢，学生可以进行终生学习。
All right, so we come to step number 2. Step number 2 is about identifying the trends and driving forces.
下面呢，我们到第二步，第二步就是我们要去确认这个未来的趋势和这个影响这个趋势的一些因素。
So trends can be very big ones, like economic trends, environmental trends, technology trends.
这个趋势有可能是一个很广泛的一个意义上的，比方说这个环境方面的，包括技术方面的，各方面的，还有经济方面的趋势。
So in order to help our students to brainstorm, for example, we ask them to think about environmental factors. We ask them to think about technological, social, political, and legal.
比方说呢，我们也会帮助学生去自己进行一个那个想象。你这个我们当考虑到这个环境的时候，我们要去考虑跟社会有关系的、政治有关系的或者法律有关系的这些因素。
So of course, it also depends on the question. If the question is very general, very wide, then they will have to look at big trends, mega trends. If the question is very specific, then perhaps the trends can be a lot more narrower rather than very wide trends.
这也根据我们这个问题来取决于这个问题。比方这个问题本身是个很宽泛的问题，那么我们就要看的是一种大的趋势。但如果是一个很具体的问题，那么这个要看的是趋势的范围就小了。
So in this step, we ask the students to work together and write down as fast as many as possible the trends that come to their mind, right? Could be robotics, could be rising costs of the third world workers, could be anything. They write down as many points on yellow sticky notes as possible.
在这个步骤呢，我们是希望学生们是结成小组一起来做这个作业，然后呢，而且希望他们是越快越好，但是用以这种要点的方式，把那个尽快把自己的一些想法都写下来。
So you can see that on the picture, the students work together and they write down as many of those yellow sticky notes as possible. Then the second part that they need to do here is to apply sense-making skill to group these yellow pieces of paper into groups.
然后呢，大家可以看到学生们他们把自己的想法都写在这个黄色的纸条上，然后呢，第二步他们就要把这个纸条进行分类，分成不同的小组。
So it's like this. So we consolidate or we reduce the number of paper into a smaller set of categories.
大家可以看到，我们这步其实就是会把一些相似内容进行合并，或者我们把一些觉得没有必要的内容就给它抽掉，这样我们给它分类。
Okay, now we come to the stage where we need to develop the scenarios.
下一步我们就要开始做更具体的一个这个作业了。
Now, of course, we can develop as many scenarios as we need, but let me explain this 2x2 quadrant.
我现在给大家来具体解释一下，我们其实是如何做这个步骤的。
So, looking into the future, if I make things simple, on the x-axis, on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side, we have uncertainty from low to high.
就是我们，比方说我们要看面向未来。如果从左边到右边，我们要想到这个还有一些不确定因素，而且这个不确定因素有低层面的，还有比较高层面的。
Okay, on the y-axis, vertical line, we go from the lower point, the lowest point, low to high, representing impact.
然后呢，左边这个竖线，我们从低往高，是代表它这个影响影响。
So now we have 4 quadrants. We have 4 boxes to explore.
下面呢，我们有这个四个方块的这些领域，我们都要去探讨。
I mean, of course, if you want to generate as many as possible, you can generate scenarios for all the 4 boxes.
你可以每个领域你其实都可以自己可以去做很多这种不同的这个作业课题。
But let's explore, because I think the most interesting one is the one on the top right.
但是我认为那个最右上方这个红色的其实是最有意思的。
Okay, but if you look at the first one, the lower left one, the lower left one is uncertainty is low, and impact is also low. Well, that means it's highly likely to occur, and it's not going to make much difference.
就是说最低的这种不确定因素最低的这种方向呢，它的这个影响力也是最小的。 就是说它肯定对这个各方面产生的影响最低。
So in that case, we'll just monitor it, right? We don't need to generate scenarios.
所以呢，对这个领域呢，我们只是一个就是对它一个去观察，我们没必要为此专门去再做一个作业。
On the right-hand side, on the bottom, we have uncertainty high, but the impact is still low. So what do we need? We just need to watch it and see whether it changes. So we review.
然后呢，右下方的这个呢，它是不确定的因素是达到了中等，但它的影响力还是低的。所以呢，对这个我们也只是一个观察。
Well, what about this one? We have impact high and uncertainty low. Right? In other words, that means that it is highly likely will occur and the impact will high. Then we should plan for it to happen.
然后呢，现在这个领域呢，就是说它的那个影响力是很大，而且它不确定的因素是比较小的，所以就说这个事情是没有可能发生的。为此我们要做一些计划和准备。
Now that means we are left behind with this one, which I believe is most important and worthwhile. Why? Because uncertainty is high and the impact is high. In other words, at this stage, we just cannot be sure that it will happen. But if it happens, it will have major consequences.
就是呢，右上方这个红色的领域呢，就是说它的不确定因素是很高的，但是呢，它的影响力也是很大的。就是说我们不知道它会不会发生，但是假如它一旦发生，它的影响力就很大。
So therefore, at least for my classes, I ask my students to develop scenarios in the red box.
所以呢，我希望我的学生是在这个红色的这个区域里边去做一些他们的作业的这个未来的这个作业。
Now, the next step is to remember all those sticky notes that we have developed. Now we ask the student to paste the sticky notes into this form.
然后呢，我们让刚才说的学生做的这些写了很多小黄条的这些学生呢，把他们这个小黄条切到这个4个小方块里去。
So they can use research. They can also apply their insights in order to determine where to put them.
然后呢，他们也可以用一些研究方法啊，或者利用自己的这个洞察力，然后去把这个进行归类。
So following on what I said, this are the areas that we ask the student to develop the scenarios.
然后呢，下一步呢，我们就让学生，他不是这个红色的这个区块里边有一些这个小他们刚才做那些小笔记，他们可以把这些东西来收集，然后就开始自己做作业了。
Because they fall into the red box.
因为大家可以看到，他们这个里边也是有一些这种黄色的小条的。
Well, we're nearly there. Then the student have to think about what we call uncertainty. Uncertainty, two uncertainties that may affect whether the scenario will become true or not.
然后呢，到这一步呢，学生还要再考虑一下有哪些不确定因素。这个2个不确定因素呢，有可能会影响你的这个作业，它这个最后能不能变成功。
Each uncertainty, assume that it's an axis with 2 extremes, right? Maybe low cost, maybe high cost, maybe highly likely, maybe unlikely, maybe big advancement, low advancement.
而且呢，这个不确定因素就包括它这个，比方投资需要投资是多的、少的，这个花销是大的还是小的，要考虑各方面的这种不确定因素。
We ask them to name 2 of these axes. One more thing, these 2 axes has to be independent.
我们让学生至少要说，提出两方面的不确定因素，而且这2方面不确定因素要是互相没有联系的。
So, for example, one can be the quality of information, high and low.
比方说，其中一个不确定因素就是这个信息的这个质量可能是高的或者低的。
Another axis could be the volume of the content of information could be very high to very low.
第2个方面是这个信息的这个量，它的这个数量，它可能是非常高的，也是或者是非常低的。
So in this case, another example, the advancement in artificial intelligence, it can be very high and very low. Everything is automated versus everything remains to be performed by humans.
然后呢， 还有一个例子就是说，这个 AI 这个技术，它有可能是技术这个进步程度也可能是非常高的，也可能是非常低的。
Second one, independent, it could be users' experience, right? Users' experience can be, through one channel only, or it can be via multiple channels.
然后下一个呢，比方说这个使用者的这个体验，使用者的体验可能是只有一个渠道，或者是好几个渠道。
So you can appreciate that there are millions of combinations of these access, right? So it's up to the students to perform research backed by research data, about data, about statistics that they have found, and then put forward these access of uncertainty.
大家可以看到，这种组合其实是成千上万的，这是由学生他们自己来决定，他们如何去做一些这个背景调研，如何去收集数据。
So we generate 4 scenarios from these 2 uncertainties, right? Because with 2 axes, each one has got 2 extremes. You have 2 times 2 equal to 4 scenarios.
刚才我们设想了各种不同的情况，然后我们对它进行一个排列组合。这样呢，我们有2个不确定因素，但是我们可以生成4个这种我们想说的这种想象性的作业。
So if I go back to my first question, how will business process management develop in the next 5 years? I have these 4 scenarios, potential scenarios.
然后就是刚才说的这个领域的 BPM 领域的研究，在未来的5年有什么样的发展呢？这样我们就可以形成4个这个想象的这种作业。
So if things are being automated to a very large extent, everything is being automated, and the user experience is multi-channel, then we can have scenario 1, fully automatic robotic automations.
然后呢，比方说这个我们认为这个所有的事情都会变成自动化，而且呢，这个用户的话，他们会从多个渠道去获得用户体验，那么我们就会形成一种
And similarly, as you explore the different corners, you can have different combinations of the axis and develop and give names to the other 3 scenarios as well.
然后呢，你们可以去把这些不同的进行排列组合，那么你就可以得出一些不同的这个一种假想的这个情景。
Well, then we come to the final step. How do the students document these scenarios? We have a template which I will show you, showing them how to give names to the scenario. What are the trends and driving forces that has helped them to develop these scenarios? What were the axes of uncertainty, and what are the research resources they have used?
然后呢，下一步呢，就是学生要用文字把他们这个研究成果要记录下来。然后我们是有一个模板的，到时候我一会儿可以给大家看这个模板。另外呢，学生他们还要对自己的这个作业要命名，然后他还要去研究这个领域的这个趋势，包括影响它的一些因素，哪些是不确定因素，还有他用了哪些资源。
So in our scenario form, we ask them, what is the scenario that you are thinking about? What are the actors? In other words, the major players in that scenario. When will this scenario be coming true? When will it occur? And how it will be, come to reality.
然后呢，我们就要在这个你自己的作业里，你要去描述一下你的这个作业主要是设想的是一个什么情景，然后它主要的影响因素是哪些，然后它怎么样，什么时候才会实现，它会在什么地方实现，为什么你如何让它能够具体实现。
Everything will be entered into a form, online form, and then we have a spreadsheet capturing all these scenarios, and we can analyze and compare each field.
然后呢，这个我们是有一个网上的一个那个模板，然后大家把这个在网上填写以后呢，我们就可以去进行分析所有的这个影响的这些领域。
So I'm going to open up one of the workbooks submitted by my students in the first semester.
我给大家看一个是第一学期我的一个学生交上来的一个作业。
Not one student, the whole class of students.
Sorry， 是那个他们一个班的所有学生，不是其中一个学生。
So you can see that in one semester I've collected nearly 850 pages
大家可以看到我
of scenarios.
交来的作业一共有843份。
No, 843 pages.
Pages.
Yeah, not sets.
843页，对我刚才翻错了。
I can speak a bit of Mandarin. 普通话. Okay. So just give you a feel, right? So students are being asked to document what are the learning resources that they have used.
这是他们当时学习的过程中用到的这些学习资源。
Right. So they put down all this.
他得写下来。
Next, they are asked to give a short title, description about the scenario.
下一步是关于你们这个作业的一个描述，简单描述。
Next, they are asked to say when and where the scenario will happen. What are the key actors?
第三步就是什么时候，然后在什么地方，你这个假想这个情景会发生，而且它们影响因素主要是哪些？
What assumptions?
这是它的一个你这个推断是基于一个什么基础之上的？
What trends that affect you in generating these scenarios?
就是说你为了做这个作业，有哪些趋势会对你这个做这个作业会产生影响？
And what are the key uncertainties?
哪些是主要的不确定因素？
What are the barriers that prevent this scenario?
就是你做这个作业里面主要的障碍是什么？
What are the enablers, facilitators that may make this scenario becoming true?
哪些因素呢能帮助你实现这个作业？
So finally, they have to write a story about the scenario.
他们下一步呢要用300字左右来对自己的这个作业做一个描述。
So what you have seen was a very quick capture of one scenario from a student. And for my students, each student have to generate 4 scenarios to a given question. So that explains why in a semester I collected nearly 850 pages of scenario.
那个就是大家可以看到，这是其中的学生做的一份作业，而这样的作业一个学生要做4份，他根据我们老师给的问题，这样的也就是为什么大家可以看到我们收的这个作业一共有800多页。
Of course, you can adjust it. Some other teachers, they only ask students to generate 1 scenario, the most likely one, and ask them to justify why they choose that one to be most likely.
但是这个也根据个人情况可以调整的。比方有的学生只让一个学生只做一份，他就是说，而且你要说明原因，你为什么选择这一份来做。
Okay, how do I judge the student? Well, of course, you know, the students are also concerned about assessment.
大家也知道，学生他们肯定对最后老师给的评估是很在意的。那么我现在讲一下我如何去评估。
Well, the most important thing is I do not judge the student based on the reality or realistic nature of the scenario, because everybody will get it wrong. Nobody will get it right.
很重要的一点呢，我不会去根据实际的一些形式或者一种环境去评判我的学生，因为每个学生他可能自己的这种推断都是有错误的，我不会去根据这个现实的情况去对他评判。
So this is the rubric that I released to them. You can see that I have 4 columns. Second one, identification of the trends and driving forces.
大家可以看到我这个评估标准，我是分成4个方向的。一个是你要确认这个趋势和它的影响，主要的影响因素。
The chosen axis of uncertainty.
还有那个它的不确定因素。
And finally, the compilation and presentation of the scenarios.
最后呢，还有你这个现场，在这个现场给大家做这个把你这个作业给大家就是演讲的时候的这个能力。
So in general, I assess them based on their background research, the quality of the data, and the coherency of the argument.
而且我的主要的评估标准，一个是你做的这个背景研究的这个做的多好，然后还有就是说你这个数据的质量有多好，另外呢还有你这个你前后的这个逻辑程度，这是我主要那个评估的。
So if they use quality sources, recent data, and derive appropriate trends and driving forces, they also choose appropriate axes and write good descriptions, they will get high marks for the assignment.
就说如果它的这个用的这个资源，它的资源本身是比较可信的，然后它的数据也是质量比较高，而且它这个方法也是比较好的，它最后的这个描述也很清晰明了，那么它肯定能得一个高的分儿。
So this way, the students can pick up a bit of research skills, and they also realize that when they confront this kind of questions when they come out to work, they know that they have to do a bit of research and don't just believe on whatever they read.
这样呢，学生通过这个方式，他会有一些学一些基础的这个研究的技能，这样他即便到了将来的真正的工作场所的话，他也会具有自己的这种研发的能力，而不是说只是相信别人说的所有一切。
All right. Now I said that students also have to record a video. Now I've got 2 short videos. Maybe I'll play part of it so that you get a feel. They are in English, but Chinese students.
然后刚才我也说，学生他们还会做一些小的视频。现在我给大家放2个，这个都是中国学生做的。
Hello everyone, welcome to my scenarios. The objective question discussed in this video is how will search evolve in the next 3 years. There are various factors that will influence the future. Based on the important and uncertain principle, we choose these 2 uncertainties to drive the plot of my scenario. The X of uncertainty, degree of AI implementation, captures the contrast between self-learned and improved mechanisms, and people-defined rules and mechanisms. The X of uncertainty, personalization scope, captures the contrast between full personalization through the whole searching processes, including the information source, search mechanisms, and results, and partial personalization, which emphasizes on user experience and search results. In the first dimension, searching tools and applications will evolve to be intelligent one-stop personal assistants. Everyone can have their assistants embedded on wearable devices. The assistant will collect data from both the person's virtual and physical surroundings, including the public knowledge, working data, and life information. When it is needed, information will be searched and retrieved through a personalized mechanism, which is self-improved to best fit the user's thinking logic and preference.
All right, I think you get an idea. Sorry.
The objective question.
I think you get an idea. The students is very creative. She's able to make the videos. She's able to explain the scenario and use different visual aids to reinforce the communication.
然后大家可以看到，这个学生他很有创造性，他用这个视频的形式去解释自己的这个整个作业，而且他用了很多不同的这种数字化的这种模式。
I find it wonderful because I've taught many years, but for the first time, I thought that I've enabled the students become more creative. I get to listen and see what the students actually know, and she has clearly demonstrated that.
对，而且呢，我觉得他通过这种方式能够让我知道学生他们真的是学到了什么东西，而且他们在思考什么东西，是这样我们对学生有更深的了解。
So this is another student, a different style, and she chose to speak to the camera.
这是另外一个学生，他这个跟刚才那个方式又不太一样，他直接对着这个视频录像的这个。
And the question that she has chosen is, how will digitalization impact the field of knowledge management in the next 5 years?
他这个领域就是说，关于这个未来5年的这个知识整个的管理，在这个领域，这个数字化会对它产生什么样的影响？
Hello everyone, my name is Kenna. Today I will show you how will digitalization impact the whole field of knowledge management in the next 5 years. 4 scenario cases will be shown. They are big data analytics, cloud-based KMS, e-learning platform, and mobile devices. There are 2 main driving forces to 4 scenario cases. They are standardization and security concern as well. For big data analytics, it is a scenario case for healthcare institutions. In the next 5 years, big data analytics enhance the objectiveness of healthcare data under standardized approach. Structured patient records will accelerate the workflow as well. For example, it will be more convenient to obtain medical records of patients by the QR code mark on their identity cards. Moreover, medical figures recorded from some professional devices.
Okay, so this is another, common style where they speak into the camera and then use some slides to assist their communication. And equally, I find it to be, quite refreshing in listening to what the students say.
这是一个就我们可能常见的一种模式，他就是自己对着这个就摄像头讲，但是他会用一些图片去帮助他去增强大家的理解。我觉得这个学生的他的很多观点也是很新颖的。
I have, hundreds of these videos on the internet. If anyone interested, I can give you a website and you can look up the students' recorded videos.
我收到这样的作业也有好几百份，如果大家有兴趣的话，我可以把这个网站给大家，大家可以在网上看一下。
So I have to say that overall, the students are very positive about this approach in Hong Kong and also in Germany. And we have tried it at different schools, including hotel school, engineering faculty, and also in the business and real estate department. I'll tell you more data later on.
我们这个方法呢，在香港的大学，包括德普大学，我们都应用了。学生对这个它的反响是很评价很积极的。而且我们是在不同的专业也用这个，包括像工程系啊。
So I'll just show you some of the survey responses from the student from one of the subjects, right? So.
我给大家看的是一些学生对这个的反响。
For example, this question asks about the method has enhanced the awareness and understanding of the driving forces and trends, and I think it looks very positive.
他这个学生评估就说，这个方法呢，让他对这个未来趋势的这些影响因素有了更深的了解。
Yeah, more than 91% agree and strongly agree.
几乎可以说91%的学生他们是同意或者非常同意。
Raise their awareness and understand about uncertainties. Also very high, about the same, 91% as well.
然后呢，还有一点就是让他们对这个不确定因素的了解更加深了，这个也是大家有91%的学生是同意的。
Generate ideas, definitely, right?
然后这个是让他们产生了新的这种想法，这个也是大家的评估很积极。
Enable them to handle scenarios that might happen in the future. Again, I got about nearly 78% agree and strongly agree.
然后呢，还有一个就是说让他们能够去应对未来可能发生的一些情景，这个也是78%的学生都是同意。
Understand the opportunities and threats of the scenario. Definitely, this is very, very convincing.
然后呢，就是了解了这种情景下它所带来的一些积极正面的影响，这个也是大家非常同意的。
Enablers and barriers, also very high.
让他们对这个它如何促进这个情景的发生的因素和哪些是障碍，有了更深的了解，这个大家也是很同意。
And they also appreciate the graduates' feedback.
而且他们对这个就是已经毕业毕业的学生的他们的这个反馈非常觉得他们这个对他们帮助。
About 60%, yes.
这个60%的学生。
And using the personal learning environment, they also rate it highly, like 70%.
而且呢，对于这种网上的这种学习的这种方式，他们也是非常赞同的，他们70%的学生都同意。
Okay, I think the rest is straightforward. Now, students find that the brainstorming and sense making very, very valuable.
就是说，他这个问题是你在这个过程中哪些方法你觉得是最有对你帮助最大的，你最喜欢的？他们学生都觉得他们大家一起讨论，然后去探索不同的想法的这个阶段是对他们是最有帮助的。
I won't read all this, but these are all the feedback collect from the students, and you can see that brainstorming, sense making, and storytelling. They like all those activities inside the new pedagogy.
我就不把这个一一给大家讲，这都是学生的一些反馈，但是大家基本上 都是对我刚才说的这个大家一起探讨这种叫头脑风暴这个过程是最享受的，他们觉得这个对他们帮助特别大。
They also believe increase their background and understanding of the subject, which they highly favor.
另外，他们觉得这个对他们这个科目的这个背景知识的了解有了更深的了解。
Uncertainty concept, we need to further improve. This is a feedback to the teacher. They say that how to help them to derive the uncertainty axis. We need to help them more, and also perhaps schedule more workshops to help them to learn about the approach.
就是说这个关于不确定因素的这个确定方面，这个好像还是得分有点低，所以我们作为老师，我们要去想一下如何通过一些新的教学方法，能够让学生对这个领域有更深的了解。
Yes, again, this gives more elaborations about the input, and we are reviewing each one of these inputs and actioning on the improvement before we run it again in September, our next semester.
在我们下学期开课之前呢，我们会认真的把大家的这些反馈去进行一次汇总，然后我们会去探讨。
Okay, I think I can skip the other subjects.
这些我就不讲了。
So I'll just give you a summary. Today, as of today, after 11 months of the project, we have 2 universities running, PolyU from 3 schools, operating in 11 subjects with more than 400 students tried. The German University, Potsdam, they have also tried with 4 subjects and close to 100 students.
这个项目我们其实进行了一共有11个月，主要是在2所那个大学进行的，一个是香港理工学院，另外一个是在德国的一所大学。
In Berlin, yeah.
OK， 在柏林的一所大学，在香港的大学我们一共做了11个项目，一共有400多名学生参与。在德国的这个大学，我们是做了4个项目，有将近100个学生参与。
I'm also pleased to report that back in March, we presented this work at the International Conference on Business Excellence, and we were awarded the best paper.
然后在今年3月，在一个关于这个商业的一个国际会议上呢，我们把我们的研究成果，当时在这个会议上也发表了。
And the news just came through today. Our approach also won the Gold Award for PolyU at Australia's LearnX Impact Award this year.
OK， 而且我们这个整个这个教学方法的这个新模式呢，也得了一个在澳大利亚的一个教学领域的一个金奖。
Okay, so that concludes what I want to say. I'd like to thank you for your time. Thank you for your patience. And I'll pass it back to the MC and perhaps any questions.